Peace. Welcome. Happy day, good people. Welcome to Ask Me Anything. This is a segment for Speaking for Profit University where we talk a little bit about everything when it comes to speaking, consulting, and securing the bag, getting paid, and getting opportunities to build wealth. So today we're going to be talking about any questions that you all have sent me on how to book a retainer and make 100K from one contract. So y'all know how I get down. Before I get started, if you're listening now, just put hashtag live in the comments, or if you're listening in the near and dear future, put hashtag replay. I always like to start off conversations with wins because I love the momentum of where wins can take us and how they make us feel. So win of the week, right? What are we going to talk about as a win of the week? One win that I am really excited about is actually having this conversation. It's really cool and really amazing to be who are impacting the world and making wealth a regular part of their life and their practice. And the way that we see wealth really move through our clients is not just in a monetary way, but the way that they're able to create impact and the way that they're able to stay focused and connected in community, and the way that they're able to build with their communities and their family. So the win for me is being in a place where we can have a conversation about how to secure large amounts of abundance that allow us to have more freedom to spend time and space and energy with people that we love. So if you're down for that type of freedom in your life, just put the word freedom into the comments so that we can know that. So yeah, again, Evolve Benton, that's me. And we are going to be talking about how to secure retainers, right? And before we get into that, I just want to say that this is a live session, and I do live sessions mostly like once a week. We usually do them every other Wednesday. So if you're here for the first time, be sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or just go on and follow us so that you can stay up to date with this. But this is theory, right? This is really much a thought practice, thinking about when it comes to the strategies that we're using as CEOs to build wealth. But in order to really move things forward, we have to get into implementation, right? And that's really where I come in as a coach. So if you're watching this and you're like, this is great, but I really don't know where to get started, this is a little bit intimidating when it comes to the strategy, I need someone to really hold my hand and help me through the process, let me know. We can get on a call and have a conversation, and see if us working together can really move you forward in building wealth in your business and growing your impact as a speaker and a consultant. So let's get into the conversation for today. And we're going to start this off with simply talking about like, what is a retainer, right? Because there's so many different definitions when it comes to that. And when we think about a retainer, right? When I first looked this up, I was thinking about lawyers and more professional folks who are doing more like really strategic contracts. But it actually came up in my own business when someone asked me to work with me in a longer way. And they asked me to put together a proposal, which allowed them to have a retainer aspect. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a retainer. A retainer is, to good old Google, a fee paid in advance to someone, especially an attorney or other professional, a consultant, in order to secure or keep their services when required. Right. So a retainer allows an organization or a business that wants to work with you as a consultant, as a speaker, to hold time in the future, or to hold time on a regular basis. You can think about it that way. Right. So let's say an organization said, Evolve, we want to work with you for the next year, and I want to put you on retainer. Right. I would decide, what are the boundaries around that contract? Like, how often are we going to work together? Are we working together once a month? Or are we working together once a week? And what is the requirement for pay and other perks and experiences that I require as a contractor in order to be on that retainer? The reason that I love this model when it comes to speaking and consulting is it truly gives us an opportunity for sustainability, which is the ultimate practice that we want to have when it comes to building profit with ease, right? We want to make sure that we have a business that's sustainable and that allows us to grow. And in order for us to grow, we need to know from. Now, the one thing that I'll say, because on the other side, right? Like I'm going to give you both sides of it. I'm going to give you the things that I love and the things that I think could be a challenge for someone who isn't experienced and doesn't really have the support they may need to make these type of decisions. Being on a retainer with someone also is a big responsibility, right? Because you're saying that whatever you're promising at that day, that it's going to be done and completed by the end of that time, right? So you have to be responsible for yourself, for your branding, for your business to make sure that you're able to sign up for a contract and a job that you can get done because you don't want to break a contract, right? And then not be in the space to really be able to continue that relationship with that organization. The other thing is that if you don't like working with the organization, which comes up, right? This might be a relationship that you did not want to end up in or be in, right? And that can feel a little awkward if you sign up for something and you don't want to really work with that group. So, what I always say is that before we sign up to do some type of long term relationship with any business, any partnership, we always want to have a trial period. And I think that if you have an organization that comes to you and wants to put you on retainer, the likelihood of them wanting to do that is because you've done some work together before. And now they want to continue that work on a longer term basis. So I would think about pitching longer opportunities, retainers, longer contracts. We call them residencies and speaking for profit to organizations that you truly love to work with, that you know you can solve their problem in a very critical way and that you're going to be able to over deliver. And those are the only folks I would do this type of work with. I would be very careful. This isn't a model that I would say we want to use with everyone. And that's just because of the nature of our work when it comes to being a speaker and a consultant. I've seen other professions, right? When I was doing my research, photographers, they're often put on a retainer with the organization. But when you go in, you are in a different capacity, right? You're going in for a particular project. And I'm sure you can set up boundaries around that. Whereas when you're a speaker and a consultant, and especially for my folks who are watching, who are diversity, equity, inclusion professionals, the topics that we're talking about are so close to home and so personal that we want to make sure we're building in that emotional capacity for ourselves. So, just some tips to think about when it comes to retainers and the way that they show up in our businesses as speakers and consultants. So, next, I want to talk about how long does it take to make 100K as a speaker and a consultant when you're on retainer, right? Because when I was looking through some of the questions and some of the things that were coming up when I put up this training, a lot of you were like, well, how long, right? When it comes to the 100K. And what I want to say to that is that I've seen clients do that in weeks, right? I've literally seen them do it in weeks, 90 days. I've seen clients do that in a year. I have many clients who have contracts and retainers for the next year that are going to pay them way over 100K, right? And we've also seen folks do things where they can maybe establish this in a weekend, right? Where they're working with a group, whether it's at a summit or a conference. So I say all that to say that one of the things I always ask all of my clients that I work with, and I want to ask you today, right? Because you're taking the time to watch this video, is what's the quickest way to the bag and what type of wealth are we trying to build? Because when people start to ask me how quick and when, that makes me think that you have a sense of urgency around making money, but a sense of scarcity around making impact, right? Because the real strategy is like, how much do you need to live a life where you're able to thrive and really commit to spending time and energy with the people you love, building on projects, working with people, growing your brand? Like, what is that? And if we know what we're feeling, and we call that our money bag prophecy here at S4P, if we know our money bag prophecy, then we just work our way backwards. And that determines how quickly you want to secure the bag, right? And then we can start to build out relationships and manifest the things that you truly want. But quick money is not always good, right? There's something about the nurturing of a relationship that's also phenomenal. So one of the things that I would suggest for anyone and thinking, I want to secure one of these type of projects, Think to yourself, can you secure a retainer that makes you 100K in the next year? Because if you can do that in the next year, then you can definitely do it in the next few weeks and you can definitely do it in a weekend, right? But you got to just give yourself sensible goals and really build it with relationships with people that you trust, honor, and want to work with when it comes to organizations. The other thing is that when it comes to securing the six-figure range as a consultant or a speaker, I really want you to think about what is the impact that you're making, because it really depends on the offer, right? Depending on the industry and the offer and who we're working with, it can range. It could range way above 100K when it comes to some of the work that you and I are doing critically, right? But it really depends on the offer and what organizations we're supporting. So when I see, or I'm looking in the tech industry, and cybersecurity specialists right now are making 150 to 250K. If I can go into an organization so that they don't have to go out and hire another one of those people and recruit them, I'm saving them not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but probably millions of dollars. And then we need to have a different conversation. So the other thing is really for you to tap into, what is your offer? What are you offering? What problem are you solving? And what is the outcome? What time, what money is it saving that organization, that person, and how are you impacting their life? And if you know that you're giving that kind of impact, then there's no way that you shouldn't be thinking about longer term relationships that allow you to see the impact in a very different view, which I think could be really, really cool and really exciting if you're able to work with the right organization. Okay, so I'm going to get into Q&A next. So if you have questions about this, please put them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer. I've already gotten a few that you put before the session, but if you have others, just put them there. So the last thing I'll talk about before we get into our Q&A is why retainers help companies. Like, why do companies want to put folks on retainer? And what I want you all to realize is this is something that S4P, in the work that we do, speaking for profit, it'll be 2 years, right, from the recording of. So before this year, we've seen some longer term residencies and contracts, but not to the level that I'm seeing them. And I think it's a particular reason why. I think it has to do with our economy, right? So organizations have money right now. They know they got money. Next year might not be the same, right? We keep hearing about this global recession. So I think a lot of folks are trying to put things in contract so that they can protect the work that they're doing, right? If I put someone on retainer in a contract, it's a budget line at my organization, it's protected, at least for this next year or so. They don't want to put you and bring you in for a contract now, and then maybe they might need to use you in spring or summer, and then they have to go through this process all over again. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's so beneficial for organizations right now. It's also gives them easeful funding options. So let's say an organization and you decide that year you're going to work together and it's going to be $50,000 or even $100,000. They're able to break that up into smaller portions, which definitely helps them when it comes to reporting and their margins and their profits and their taxes and all of that. The other reason is that it gives organizations an opportunity to really collect data that can move the needle forward on the topic or the project that you are presenting for that organization, right? So it gives them the data. So let's say you're in a role that is a contractor, but they want that role to be, uh, an employee, permanent. They might be using your work, your data that you're collecting to give that to their board or to their leadership in the near and dear future so that they can grow that part of their company in that department. So I say all that to say that when we're coming with this conversation of a longer term contract, it's not out of the blue. People want to talk about this. It benefits the organization just as much as it benefits you. So if you find an organization that you love working with, why not reach out to them, Have one engagement, and after that goes really well, see if there's a longer term. Like, think to yourself, and I'm gonna mention this number just because think so many people think about it as big money, but $1 million, and we thinking about 100K, right? That's literally like ten contracts. It's not a lot that you would have to do. 10. We always think more, but less work, more impact, right? And if you are doing more than 100K for those contracts, it's even less to get to that $1 million point. So my point is, it's not far fetched. It's very accessible, but you just got to put in the steps and put in the work and put in the strategy. And the strategies that we use at S for P, and when I say we, team and I, it's so cool. We had one of our first like all staff meetings with the group. We have 3 team members that work with us at S for P, and it was so powerful to see the growth that we've had the last few years. But the team here, we have steps, strategies, tips that we build to support our clients with being able to land these larger contracts and do it in a way that feels easeful, that doesn't feel stressful. We have a proposal template that folks have used. We have calls where we actually will go through each step of your proposal to make sure that it speaks to those elite organizations and that you're able to put in that price column 100K, right? So, like I said, if you're interested in higher level mentorship, we're here. I'm here to support. You would just simply send me a DM, and we can set up a call and talk a little bit about it. Now, I want to get into the questions that were asked about retainers. And if you're watching now and you have a question, I'm going to go on and answer that for you. So make sure you put them in the comments. So this question was actually like 4 questions put together, which I love. And it says, "What was your offer?" Or what's a retainer offer? What did you build? How did you build the relationship? What happened in the initial conversation about a retainer contract? What was important to the client to close the deal? So these are all great questions. So I'm currently like actually in a contract. Well, not in a contract, but in a contract negotiation about a retainer. And my offer initially was that I work with this organization to put together a DEI roadmap, right? So to really look at what they currently have as DEI practices and give them some feedback on what could be better and lay that out for the next 5 years, right? So we did some focus groups, we did some training and development, and I met with their DEI committee. So we did that within a like 90-day period, and it went really well. I think they loved the end product that I gave them, and they were like, "We want to work with you. We want to work with you on a retainer." So I put together a proposal of I think 3 or 4 different options of retainers that they can use with me. And now we're in negotiation to talk about which one and what's going to be included in that. So that was the offer. The offer is for us to extend our time together. And it's too much for me to explain every offer that I gave them, but I gave them 3 or 4. And that's kind of what we do at S4P. We give them different ranges of how they can work with us. So I gave them different price ranges and also different time, right? Like I gave them a 6-month one, a year one, and one that was like 24 months. So yeah, so I hope that answers that question. And what happened in the initial conversation about the retainer? It's so interesting. In this conversation, I didn't bring it up. I originally had put a proposal together to just finish working with them by the end of this year. Because when we started talking about this, I believe it was last month. We're in August 2022, so we started talking about this contract in July, I believe. So I put a proposal together to just wrap up our work and work until the end of the year. And that's when they were like, "Oh, we want to work with, can we talk more about a retainer?" And that's when I started doing the research on this and looking this up. Right. So that's the other thing as a CEO, as a business owner. If you don't know something, you are the researcher, right? Until you get a researcher on your team, you got to learn it, look it up, and make it happen. And what was important to the client to close the deal? So this is what I'm working through now. So I might have to answer this in a part 2, but I can give you some examples from clients as well. Right now, I think what's important for them is to make sure that it fits their funding process because this organization It's an art organization and they get money in a particular way. So I think for them, it's about timing. It's not about a yes or no. They've already committed that they do want to work with me and they want me to be on a retainer. And now it's really like, how does that work for their current funding resources? And how do we make sure it works for both of us? So I think what's the most important for them is that the quality of the work stays the same, and that they're able to use that to continue to build more relationship with their funders to continue funding the project. But when it comes to what's most important to the client, you're going to already know that. That's what you're putting in your proposal. That's what you're putting in you send. You already know what's the most important thing to them. And a lot of times it's sometimes saving a little bit of money, so giving them a deal on the front end. But a lot of times it's about the impact that you're going to make and that you continue to show up in the way that really cause them to want to have a conversation about working with you longer, right? Like that's the real deal. Okay. Those were those questions. And then I only got one more. So if anyone else is here and wants to ask a question, please put it into the comments. And if not, I'm gonna head out and finish my evening with some relaxation. So the last question that I got was, how much should you charge for a longer contract? Or if there's like any additional cost that you should put in. And I thought this question was interesting because there are some things you might want to put into your contract to protect yourself or to just to make sure that you're able to over deliver. So for me, I always add in maybe some funding for being able to do additional administrative tasks. Like, example, a contract I did this year, like had it put into a really nice PDF and put it on brand for the organization. And that's something I plan on doing moving forward. I think it shows that extra step of love, but I am not a graphic designer. I am not that artiste. So I hired someone to do it, right? And I wanted to be able to make sure I had the money within the budget to leverage it. So make sure that when you're coming up with your budget of how much you're going to charge, you're considering some of the administrative tasks that you might not have a skill set in that you might want to add in to really add value to the project. Like maybe if you're doing some type of work where you need to collect data and you're not a data analysis, you can hire someone who is to really put that data in a very fruitful way, some graphics that really grab the attention. I think that oftentimes what we do as speakers and consultants is we feel like we need to do all the work and all the labor. And that really makes us depleted and puts us in a position where we're not putting out the best products, right? You're the person who secured the offer. You don't have to be the person who completes the offer, right? You secured it because you're that person in your company, but your brand and company can be supported by contractors and other folks that might have a zone of genius and a skill set that you don't. So don't be afraid to add that to your pay, on the pay side to your what you're going to charge and your rate. Just know that you don't have to add that on the actual proposal. That's some of the money that you just put in on the back end, right? So let's say for me, my bottom is like $3,000, but I want to make sure I have a good product. That's why I always ask for more, right? So I can have that buffer to have expenses to really be able to deliver something in an amazing way. And then the last thing that I'll say before I head out is that when it comes to long term pricing, protecting your time is so important. So whatever you want to put in your contract to make sure that if an organization needs to reschedule at the last minute or they, maybe they need to fly you out and if the flight doesn't work or, just things to protect cancellation, I think that's always smart to have when you're in a longer term contract because you never know what's going to happen, right? Like if you all want to break the contract, if you want to break it or if they want to break it, is there a time that someone has to give to that? Is there a fee that needs to be paid? Right? Just think about all the things that can happen because the longer you work with someone, right, the more often it can happen. And the last thing that I will say, this is the very last thing, because I said the last thing was the last thing, is that we all should have some type of liability insurance as business owners. That's something I tapped into recently because if we do need to protect ourselves, and I pray and I hope that you never run into an organization that you have to end up suing or going into any legal battles with. But we want to have protection in our insurance, right? So if you don't have insurance as a CEO and you're consulting work, then you should have it, right? And those are some of the other things that we definitely talk about at S for P, because we're all about having integrity with our work, over delivering, building wealth. And I'm going to tell you right now, the best way you can build wealth is to protect your wealth. The best way to build it is to protect it. And the only way you can protect it is by being insured and making sure you have all your ducks in a row and doing your due diligence. So, Evolve Benton here, the Speaking for Profit coach. It's been an honor to have this conversation with you about retainers and about how to make 100K, right? As a speaker and a consultant through one contract, right? And the way that you do that is really tapping into your offer, tapping into your expertise, building with organizations and nurturing relationships, and being willing to ask for more, or ask for in your life. So I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, if you did and you're watching on YouTube, or even if you're watching on any of the other platforms, feel free to like us, share this with someone else who might need that type of support. And until next time, peace.